Today we're going to look at a very interesting chart that I've compiled. Nobody's thought of doing this before. We're going to look at the complete history of the first oldest comics to reach 50 copies graded 9.8 or higher by CGC. And it's a fascinating list. You get to see when comics really start to get hoarded. And it's also a lot of just luck and pure chance that a number of these books, number of copies have survived. Let's dive in. The oldest comic ever published in the United States that has survived and has more than 50 9.8s is not even a key issue. Amazing Spider-Man number 33, cover date February 1966. Dr. Kurt Connors appears in this issue. We've got a Stan Lee and Steve Ditko story. There's over 3,000 copies graded because, of course, Amazing Spider-Man is the most collected Silver Age series. However, just by luck, 57 copies have survived and are graded 9.8. Next on our list is the only other comic from 1966. Another issue that's not really a key issue, but a warehouse find was discovered and explains why there's so many super high-grade copies of Thor 132 dated September 1966. The first appearance of Ego in cameo on the last page. There is a letter published from Dave Cockrum. We've got Stan Lee's story here and Jack Kirby art. Next, we have only one single comic from 1967 from any publisher making the list, Fantastic Four 59. Now, this one's been graded a lot because we do have Doctor Doom, Silver Surfer, and the Inhumans in this issue, Stan Lee's story, and Jack Kirby art. There are 56 copies graded. I forgot to mention that Thor has 86 copies graded because of the warehouse find. Now we enter into 1968. Now things change. This is the first year that people really start to speculate heavy on Marvel Comics. Why is that? Because in early 1968, Marvel's distribution rules changed, and they were, for the first time in a decade, allowed to publish double the amount of titles. And they relaunched a number of titles and had a bunch of number ones. So we're going to see a bunch of those coming up on our list. The first one is Captain America, number 100, April 1968. It is the first issue under his name. And it also has a Black Panther appearance. The numbering and story continue from Tales of Suspense 99. There are over 6,000 copies graded. There's even two 9.9s of this book and 49 9.8s. That same month, Amazing Spider-Man 59, April 1968, came out, 3,000 copies graded, and there are 50 9.8s. It's the first Mary Jane Watson cover. Kingpin has a cameo on the last page, and we've got Stan Lee's story and John Romita cover art. The next month came out Submariner number 1, continued from the Iron Man and Submariner number 1 one-shot, and this does feature the origin of the Submariner retold and a Roy Thomas story. Over 6,000 copies graded. This is one of the books definitely hoarded. There are 94 9.8s. That is the highest so far we've seen of any comic published up to this point. And this is all publishers, not just Marvel. Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. came out the next month, June 68. Scorpio appears. We've got Jim Steranko story and cover art. Over 2,000 copies graded. There is actually a 9.9, and there are 64 9.8s. The next month, Amazing Spider-Man 62 came out. It's got a Medusa appearance. Stan Lee wrote the story, and we've got John Romita cover art. 2,500 copies graded. There are 84 9.8s. Avengers 55 came out the next month. Now, this book had a lot of movie hype, and so a lot of people sent their copies in to get graded. So there's over 2,500 copies graded, 56 9.8s. We've got the Crimson Cowl revealed as Ultron 5 first appearance. The next month, Amazing Spider-Man 64, September 1968, has a Vulture appearance, written by Stan Lee, John Romita cover art. Over 2,600 copies graded, including 92 9.8s. Now, what comes up next is most impressive. Spectacular Spider-Man Magazine, number 2, dated November 1968, with a Green Goblin cover and story, and it is the last issue of this 2-issue magazine series. Stan Lee wrote it, John Romita cover art. Why is this one so special? This is the first comic ever to have over 100 copies graded in 9.8. There are 107 of them, and there's even one 9.9. Continuing on, now we're into 1969. Captain America 109, dated January 69, has the origin of Captain America retold, and we have Nick Fury in this issue. Stan Lee wrote the story, and Jack Kirby art. 2,500 copies graded. There are 59.8s. We get our first non-Marvel comic on the list next. Heroes Inc. presents Conan, a one-shot from Wally Wood, published in 1969 with an atomic explosion panel, and Wally Wood did the stories, and there's even Steve Ditko art in this one, as well as Wally Wood. This only has 400 copies graded, but definitely warehouse storage, and lots of copies survived. This one unsold. 96 9.8s, including 4 9.9s of this book. And I remember decades ago, I think I even had 100 copies just sitting around. Well, that's it for the 60s. We enter the 1970s, August 1970, in fact. Cover date, Amazing Adventures #1, featuring the Inhumans and the Black Widow. Even Fantastic Four appears. We've got Jack Kirby's story in this one. Over 1,000 copies graded, 55 or 9.8. The big speculated book of 1970 really makes a splash here next. Conan the Barbarian, #1, October 1970. The origin and first appearance of Conan in comic books, and the first appearance of King Kull in a cameo. We've got a Roy Thomas story. This book was speculated right from the top. Over 6,000 copies graded, and 118 9.8s. And there is a story saying that one lone retailer bought 25,000 copies of this book in 1970 and was able to sell it for years and years. So possibly the first massively speculated book. So lots of high-grade copies are out there. Amazing Spider-Man 91, December 1970, is the funeral of Captain George Stacy. Stan Lee wrote the story. We've got Gil Kane and John Romita art. Over 1,000 copies graded. There are 52 9.8s. Well, Jack Kirby switched over to DC Comics at this time and created New Gods #1, February 1971, the first appearance of Orion, Light Ray, Metron, Highfather, and Kelleback. And Jack Kirby did the art and the story. 3,000 copies graded, including 89 9.8s. So this is one of a few Jack Kirby-related DC Comic #1 issues, highly speculated, lots have survived. Including, the same month, Forever People #1 came out from DC, with the first full appearance of Darkseid, first appearance of the Forever People, and Superman and Jimmy Olsen even appear in this issue from Jack Kirby. 3,000 copies graded. There are 82 9.8s. Well, Batman 232 came out June 71 from DC. First appearance of Ra's al Ghul, origin of Batman and Robin retold in this issue, and a cameo of Talia. And Denny O'Neil wrote the story. 3,700 copies graded, including 81 9.8s. Amazing Spider-Man 97, dated June 71 from Marvel, had a drug story not approved by the Comics Code Authority. We've got a Green Goblin appearance in a story written by Stan Lee. And there are 2,200 copies graded, including 56 9.8s. The next month, Amazing Spider-Man 98, July 71, came out with another drug story not approved by the Comics Code Authority. Green Goblin also in this issue and written by Stan Lee. And at this time, drugs seemed to be the big issue, so DC's got their take. Green Lantern 85, August 71, Speedy revealed to